Greetings, my name is Chlorastroklos, and in this video I'm going to take you through a weapons tier list for Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon patch 1.07. As you can see on the screen, I'm an S-rated player. I was one of the first 10 players this season to make it to S rank, and I'm reasonably good at the game, so you can kind of trust my opinion, but I haven't played everything, so I'm going to be wrong about some stuff. Anyway, you're not here to hear my life story, you're here for the tier list, so let's get right into that. I'm going to start with equipping nothing. Equipping nothing is not amazing, but we're going to put it in D tier because if you just go into a battle with no equipment, all you're going to be able to do is punch. But there are going to be some weapons rated lower than this, so I want to include it in the tier list for reference. Next up is punching. Punching is actually like better than you would think it is. It's like B tier. Mostly because you can use it to stagger extend, so you can get a stagger on an opponent and then punch them several times to wait for your weapons to cool down before punishing them with the same weapon that staggered them. This is pretty rare, and the use cases are really niche, but I do think it is actually good, and I want to include it on the tier list for reference. I'm going to go through the kicks as well. Probably the basic kick for biped is just A tier. It's really good. Kicking people is really strong. It is get blanked by pulse shields, so that's something to consider. If your opponent has a shield, kicking will not be as strong into them. But generally, you should be fishing for kicks whenever you can if they don't have a shield. And even fishing for kicks against shields can force them to at least use an activation, so it's quite strong. I highly recommend it. The hit stun is really good to follow up on. Moving on to the reverse joint kick. This kick is even better than the biped kick. It has a better hitbox. The biggest downside probably is that you are a reverse joint, which means that you have lower stability and naturally will just randomly die to stuff. But it is actually better this patch since they nerfed the biggest counter to reverse joint kick, which was the hammer. So reverse joints might be a little bit more playable than they were in the past. Also better than biped kick, but not as good as reverse joint kick, is the quad kick. Quad kick is a larger hitbox and it feels like worse to play against. I don't know if it's actually like better for some reason, but it is like really miserable to just have a quad sitting in your face and constantly spamming kick on you, especially if you don't have a shield. So I don't think it's as good as the reverse joint kick. It doesn't have like all the bonuses that the reverse joint kick does, but it is still quite good. And then tank kick is usable. I'm going to say it's not C tier because I've died to this several times. It's not like just barely passing. Like, it is good to weave tank kicks into your play if you're playing tank, but I would even say it's probably used more often than punch comboing. It's not like as good as the other kicks. It's got a little bit more of a requirement to set up. Now I'm going to move on to melee. Just as a general note, melee is in a pretty rough place, even after this patch, which has seen considerable buffs to some of the melee weapons. Mostly just because one of the best parts in the game continues to be the pulse shield, and the pulse shield really makes your life hard as a melee player. But let's go through the melee weapons anyway, because some of these are still useful, and it's probably good to know where they stand in relation to other weapons. I'm going to put the pile in B tier. I'm going to say it's somewhere between. It's probably better than the punch combos, but it's probably worse than the tank legs. The pile's a good finisher. It has a considerable amount of like setup required, so you have to like assault boost at people while charging it. So there's like some skill involved here, and it doesn't really offer you anything else other than punish damage. So it's kind of like losing a weapon slot. But it is. It does do a lot of damage if you land it, and you can just like one-shot players. So I can't say it's really worse than B tier. It's a very effective way to finish out a player who's been staggered. Explosive thrower. I'm going to say the explosive thrower is A tier, probably better than quad kicks, probably better than RJ kicks. It's really quite oppressive to keep people off of you and out of your face, especially if you're on quad legs, where you can continue to move around while throwing it, or tank legs. Although tank legs in general, I think, are probably in a significantly rougher spot than quad legs, just because of the additional weight and just how slow they are. There's a lot of builds that are very fast and can kind of just kite you the entire game. But in general, I think the explosive thrower is a really effective tool, keeping close range builds off of you on quads and tanks, and it is it's just got a very high uptime and does a lot of stagger. I think it's good. Wouldn't say it's S tier, but definitely an A tier weapon. Chainsaw is like passable. I don't think it's like super good, but you can do some funny things where you stagger somebody or get a little bit of a hit stun on someone and combo it into the chainsaw. There's one player named Trash Panda from the AC6 Discord, ACD, who is very good at the chainsaw and will kill you with it over and over. But I can't say that, mileage may vary, Moving on, Stun Baton's terrible. This is the only melee weapon that doesn't really cash in when you stagger somebody, and it's really the only one that's counterable. You can just have high resistance on your head, and then the Stun Baton doesn't really do anything anymore. It's also got all of the other downsides that melee has, and it's not very good. It's funny though. If you kill someone with it, you'll have a very good time because they will be upset, but I don't think it's good. Laser Blade. I think the Laser Blade is good. I think it's probably better than the Pile. I think it's probably better than Tank Kicks. I don't think it's as effective as Biped Kicks, really, but setting up the Laser Blade, it does incredible amounts of stagger and damage. It got buffed this patch. It doesn't really solve the main problem. The main problem with the Laser Blade is that the hitbox is like on the blade and above, so if your opponent is below the blade, it tends to just go right over them and not do anything. This is like a pretty big problem, and additionally, it's really hard to hit kites with it. Like people who are on lightweight kites, they play uppy downy and just like fly up into the air and then fall back down and fly up in the air and fall back down. Really hard to hit with this weapon. So it's kind of what's holding it back, but otherwise it's very good. It has 2 hit stuns on the charge attack, does a lot of damage, does a lot of stagger, but it's kind of niche otherwise. However, if you're playing against the best build in the game, or what was previously the best build in the game on patch 1.06.1, the Lammergeier, this weapon is incredibly good at matching their elevation and just almost instantly killing them. I really recommend it if you're having trouble beating Lammergeiers. Just get a build with a decent amount of stability and enough speed to catch a Lammergeier, charge this weapon in their face, and you'll find out how quick they die. It's sweet. Laser Slicer. We fixed the cutscene skip, so Laser Slicer is no longer trash. I'm going to put it right up here next to the Pile. I'm going to say it's actually probably better than the Pile, just because it's a little bit easier to execute. They pretty much do the same thing. You get a stagger, you use the full combo from the Laser Slicer, and your opponent will be dead. There's not really there's not really a reason to play this build right now. I think that the best builds in the game are probably still kind of immune to these Laser Slicer and Pile cheeses where you get a stun and then finish them with these weapons. It's a lot more important to be able to stick damage consistently, but the Laser Slicer is once again usable. Thanks From Software for fixing the cutscene skips. Okay, thanks if you're a Laser Slicer player. We'll get into that later, maybe. Lance. Lance is... I don't totally feel comfortable even putting this at C tier. Lance is very unreliable. The biggest problem with this weapon is that the latch, like the grab portion of the Lance, is defender side. So very frequently, or at least I think it's defender side, very frequently you will hit them and then slide right off and go way past them. This weapon is unreliable. It does a crazy amount of damage and stagger, but it is just not easy to land at all. Hammer. I'm gonna say Hammer is pretty good. It's probably worse than the RJ kick now. It's probably around where the quad kick is. I'm gonna say it's better because of the range. Hammer is used to be an extremely effective weapon at peeling people off of you in close range. It probably still is a very effective weapon at peeling people off close range, but it got a heavy nerf in the last patch, and it is significantly less threatening. So I'm not going to put it up in S tier where it used to be. It is now down in A tier. I'm going to say it's even probably behind the Explosive Thrower. I think if you're probably a zoning build, the Explosive Thrower has some use cases now that the Hammer doesn't. So that's where I'm going to put it. Please feel free to argue about it in the comments. I'm going to move on to the Butt Blade. Butt Blade, this is just the basic laser sword. I'm going to say this weapon is fine. It's another good stagger punish. I think it actually has more utility than both of the laser slicer and the pile, and I think it's easier to land than the tank kick. The charge attack on this weapon does good hit stun. Is it better than the laser blade? They're both really unreliable. I've used both of them in ranked. I haven't used the butt as much as the laser blade because I actually think the laser blade is better. So I'm going to put it just below the laser blade. The biggest problem is just sometimes you randomly whiff. I have heard of players on mouse and keyboard like doing a 360 and managing to hit everything around them when they use this weapon. I don't know if that's just the regular slash or the charge attack. So I might not know everything about this weapon. There might actually be tech that makes this better than the laser slicer, but I don't know how to do it. So I'm going to put it in B tier, and someone can correct me and yell at me later. Moonlight. The Moonlight is like somewhere around here in C tier. It's like not a real weapon. You want it to be a real weapon, and it does a lot of damage. You know, it might be playable now. Maybe, no, but I'm going to be harsher in this tier list. I don't want people to get the wrong idea. This weapon is just suboptimal. There's a lot of other better ranged punishes than this, and although the damage is nice and it looks cool, it's just not. It's very limited for what it is. The range is limited, and the charge attack is like pretty easily avoided. So I'm going to put it down here. I'm going to say the redshift is about the same. I see it get used a little bit more. I'm actually going to say maybe this is where the line for B and C is. The redshift does a little bit more stagger, and I see kites use it more frequently. So I'm going to put it up in B tier. It's also nice that energy defense doesn't affect this, and you don't need to run the specific generator to make this weapon good. Moving on to the Oscillator. Oscillator's pretty good. I'm going to say this weapon is A tier, although it is really hard to use. I'm probably going to put it behind biped kicks because it's just like not as consistent. But the charge attack on the Oscillator is really strong. You can do this thing called Demon Blade where you toggle manual aim on and rotate your camera right when it comes out to point the Oscillator directly at your opponent and just instantly slash them. It does a crazy amount of stagger and damage, and it got buffed this patch. This weapon's really good. It's really hard, but if you like melee, this is a weapon I would recommend picking up. Usually you pair it with the Pulse Blade, or you play a kite that runs away and just tries to get people to run into you while you use the charge attack on the Oscillator. Now moving on to the rifles. Oh, the dagger. I don't know how I forgot the dagger. It must have gotten thrown into the wrong place. This is not the right order to do it, but I'm just going to do it anyway. The dagger is, I think it's up here with the Oscillator. I think it's going to be behind the Oscillator. It's not quite as good. But I think this is a real weapon that you can use in S rank. The hit stun is similar to the Pulse Blade, but the main difference is that with the dagger, you can hit stun someone, combo them with another weapon into a stun, and then you can use the dagger to punish, which frees up a weapon slot. So you no longer need a weapon to punish and to hit stun. This weapon does both. So I really like that. I think that probably there is like a use case for this. I know I've seen Windshear use it online, but I am not good enough with this weapon to tell you how to use it beyond that. I just know that if you can find a way to land that hit stun consistently, which is a big if, this weapon is really effective at both giving you that initial hit stun so you can start a combo and giving you the punish once you've staggered your opponent. Okay, moving on to rifles for real now. I'm going to start with the Ransetsu RF. This weapon's fine. I'm going to say it's more consistent than the Laser Blade, but I'm not going to say it's better than that. It's definitely not an A tier weapon, but rifle kites are a thing, and this is one of the weapons they use. And that's pretty much all I have to say about the Ransetsu RF. Moving on to the Curtis. The Curtis got buffed this patch. I'm going to put it down in the bottom of B tier. It's probably better than punching people. Is the Coral Blade better than... This has got to be better than that, actually. Sorry for the misplacement there. Punching people's got to be like the last resort in B tier, but it is like a real strategy, so I'm not going to put it in C tier. The Curtis is somewhere in B tier now. I think the muzzle velocity really helps it. It's It's kind of only usable in AB. I wouldn't use it outside of Assault Boost because of the additional stagger and impact, but it does sort of pump damage and stagger pretty well now, and it's more in line with the other weapons. So I don't hate using this weapon now, but I can't say it's like excellent. There's probably better options if you're using the Curtis. You'd probably find something that does the same job a little bit better. Speaking of something that does the same job a little bit better, the Harris, I'm going to say the Harris is the better version of the Ransetsu RF for rifle kites because the muzzle velocity is higher, and it has a better charge attack than the triple shot. But I still don't think rifle kites are all that good, so I'm going to put it in B tier and leave it here. The default assault rifle, I think, is the Turner. Yeah, it's the Turner. This weapon is probably worse than the Moonlight, better than the Chainsaw. No, it's not better than the Chainsaw. It's probably better than the Lance. It's a little bit more reliable, but this weapon doesn't really do much. It's just a stagger maintenance tool, essentially, and if you're wanting to use a Kinetic to put down, to like build up stagger on your opponent, there are lots of better options than the Turner. Same story for the Scudder. I don't know which one of these two is better, and I don't care. I'm not going to put too much thought into it because neither of them are really very good. Ransetsu AR. This weapon's terrible. This is probably the worst weapon in the game that you can, but it has the advantage of being able to be purged. So if you accidentally equip this weapon, you can at least drop it. So you don't have to waste the weight. So it's better than nothing, but like it does require an input to get rid of. I don't know why you wouldn't purge it. This weapon, I think you could probably, this is not true, but I think you could, maybe it is true. You could spend the entire ammunition of this weapon, not just a clip, but the entire ammunition of this weapon and not stagger someone. This is terrible. There's no use case. Don't equip the Ransetsu AR. Just equip another weapon and throw it on the ground. The Ludlow. Where would I put the Ludlow? I think this weapon is somewhere around the Curtis. I don't really know where. It's usable. I think it's worse, but not by like a lot. It's usable, but it's not impressive. The buffs in the patch helped it a little bit, but I wouldn't recommend using it. I think if you're wanting to build up stagger, there are going to be better options later on. I don't remember what this weapon's called, but it's just a better version of the Ludlow. And it's... Is it worse than the Curtis? It's like somewhere... These three are all sort of the same. They're just like consistent DPS weapons. They're better used in AB, and there are just better options for building up stagger than these weapons. But they aren't useless anymore. They've all kind of got buffed. They're a little bit more usable. Unlike the next weapon, the Attaché, I'm going to say this weapon is worse than the Lance. Actually, I don't even think it's usable. I'm going to put it down here in D tier. It's probably better than the Stun Baton, but it's like, don't equip this. It just doesn't function. I don't like it. I hope that they buff some of these bad kinetics or give them an identity, because right now they're just kind of all worse versions of what these three are doing. This one has the highest ammo capacity. This one, I think, has the best uptime, and then the Curtis is probably the best like muzzle velocity and has an additional punish to go with it, like the Harris. Etsujin, this weapon got nerfed pretty hard. Do I want to put it in A tier? I don't think so. I'm going to struggle with where to put this one. I think it's like somewhere around the rifle kite rifles. Like it's a real weapon. Maybe I'll put it at the top of B tier. It's probably fine. It's a real weapon. It's pretty good at pressuring shields, but that nerf hurts. Got nerfed in 1.07, and it is just not what it used to be. It was really, really oppressive last patch. I probably should have had it in S tier if I didn't. But it is just... it feels like a shadow of its former self, so I don't know if I'm biased just because I really liked the Etsujin last patch, and I'm sad about the nerfs, but I'm going to put it at the top of B tier. It is good for pressuring shields. It still does that job. The muzzle velocity didn't really change. It's the kind of the same weapon it was before. It just does a little bit less damage and stagger, and it feels bad. GAT. The GAT is the Huben, I think. This weapon is, I'm going to say it's better than the Attaché, but it's not a good weapon. There are better options. Even these rifles are better. GAT is really, really bad for PvP. I don't recommend playing it, and anyone who tells you it's good has not tried to use this in S rank, or maybe A rank, or maybe B rank. This weapon is just really slow and doesn't really do what you want it to do. Moving on to the shotguns. The Haldeman. Haldeman's kind of outclassed now. I think it's still really good. It's probably better than all of these for maintaining stagger. Is it better than these stagger punishes? I don't really know. We're not really comparing comparable things. It's better than the tank kick and the stagger punishes. Is it better than the melee setups? It's probably somewhere around here in B tier. This weapon's gotten outclassed this patch. There is a new kid in town. We will talk about that in a minute. But the Haldeman is no longer a good like stagger maintenance option, or at least not the best in slot stagger maintenance option for like rapid stagger maintenance, where you build a lot of stagger really fast and you also maintain it through rapid fire rate. I used to be a really huge fan of this weapon. I'm still kind of like this weapon, but I feel like it has a lot of trouble with its effective range against some targets, and it is just outclassed now. Zimmerman. All right, we got an S tier weapon. Zimmerman's S tier. It's a really good CQC option. Does a lot of damage, a lot of stagger if you get close. It's not like, there's nothing wrong with this weapon. It's just good. You know, it centralizes your build around one thing, which is getting close to the opponent. And then it fulfills its promise, and it does its job, and it kills your opponent if you do it. It does kind of struggle into pulse shield, but they nerf pulse shield a little bit. And you can always alternate fire your Zimmermans, so it's not a huge deal. It's also great in combination with pulse shield. So yeah, Zimmerman's S tier. Highly recommend this weapon. Moving on to the Sweet 16. Sweet 16 is a good stagger punish. I'm going to put it in A tier. Is it as good as these melee weapons? Probably not. It's a little bit more niche, and you have to equip it in 2 slots. So usually when you use a Sweet 16, you pull out 2 Sweet 16s, just pop them for like 5k, put them back. But I have seen this weapon used pretty effectively online. I've seen people in the top 100 with it, so it's a good weapon. It kind of expensive to run because of the build requirements. You have to get up in their face, and you have to wear 2 of them on your back, but it's very effective when you get it to work. It does a lot of stagger, a lot of damage. I'm a fan of the Sweet 16. Cocklet. Cocklet is another weapon that got outclassed. I'm going to say it's somewhere around here. Maybe like somewhere less reliable. It's probably better than the... it's probably worse than the Haldeman. But it does a lot of stagger. It does a lot of damage. It's a little bit inaccurate. It's got slow bullets. So it's kind of ineffective against some players who are like lightweight kites or rats. Like, it doesn't really work. But it does do a lot of stagger, and if you hit it consistently, you'll stun the opponent and be able to punish them. It's really its job, and it does it a little bit well. Ducket. Here is the weapon that outclassed the Haldeman. I'm going to say the Ducket is quite good now. I've been hearing some people say it doesn't really matter. I think it does. I think this weapon is really good. I'm going to put it above the hammer. I'm going to put it above RJ Kick. Am I going to put it above the explosive thrower? I don't think so. I think the explosive thrower is probably one of the best in slots. Ducket's really good. If you want to build up stagger on a target and blow them up, I would recommend using the Ducket. This is it does a lot of residual stagger per second, and the muzzle velocity is pretty decent, and it sort of revives the BVO build of old, now the BDO. So give the Ducket a try. If you like lightweight CQCs, this is probably your weapon. This is the Sampu. I think the Sampu's somewhere around the Cocklet. It's probably better. It's another good staggering tool. I've seen players use it. I don't really think it's in the same class as the Ducket, but I do think it's like it's not a side grade, but it's like a slight downgrade or just a different option. I think it does more stagger per second. I don't remember, but it is like limited range, and it has 2 projectiles, and you can miss one sometimes. It feels really bad. Moving on to Viento. I think this weapon is never it's kind of just still exists. I'm gonna put it back down here. I don't think it's as good as the Ducat. I think the Ducat's a little bit more consistent. It has higher upfront stagger, so if you're firing 2 at the same time, you'll get a stagger faster. But I think it's still usable. The range is really limited. Is the biggest problem with this weapon. So I'm not sure you should use this on lightweights. I think you should use the Ducat. But I do think this is still playable in some sense. You get really up close with the... oh my god, my brain broke. You can get really close with this weapon and stagger your opponent and then punish them. But you're going to need a heavier build because it is a little bit less consistent than it used to be. The Egg is the stun gun. Egg's great. Is the Egg an S tier weapon? It might be. I think I'm going to move the Egg up to S tier. I've seen some builds with this that were unknown to me previously that just pump damage with the Egg, get a stun, and do a punish. Or they use the Egg and the Cranch at the same time to make sure that they can't put up their pulse shield, so you can continue to just pump eggs. I think this weapon is really, really effective with the amount of damage it puts out with the electricity procs. And it's just really annoying to get shot by. So I think this is good. It's also nice if you get an electricity proc on a lightweight target, they get stunned, and then you can just chain them down really fast. So I'm a fan of the Egg. I'm going to say it's an S tier weapon. I haven't used it a ton myself, so I don't know necessarily what the disadvantages are, but I've had it used on me a lot, and I know that it can kill people really fast. Moving on to the Zwanga. Schwanga? I'm going to put this near the top of A tier. I'm going to say it's probably a little bit worse than these rifle kites. Probably a little worse than these melee weapons. Is it better than the... It's probably a little worse than the Haldi. Probably... it's probably better than that pistol. I'm going to put the Schwanga around here in B tier. This is a good bazooka. It has, as far as bazookas go, it has a pretty good proc stat. I think it's 8 meters. So anything within 8 meters, it explodes, and it does damage in a 15-meter radius. It does its full damage and stagger. Big problem with this weapon is that it's slow. The reload is fast, so it's got a lot of uptime, but it doesn't tend to even get within that 8 meters of your target, and frequently you'll just be firing Schwangas and missing all the time. If you want a weapon that doesn't do that, Majestic is a slightly better option. It has a longer reload and a shorter proc stat, but the muzzle velocity is faster. It tends to hit the target a lot more often. I'm going to say it's up here around the rifle kite rifles. It's not like a real build, but it is fun, and you can kill people with it. I'm going to say it's better than the rifle kites. I think it is. No, it's not. That's not real. It's not. It's better than like this weird melee jank, but it's just like it's just not that reliable. It's not reliable enough to be A tier. It's definitely not reliable enough to be S tier. But 2 Majestics will just stun someone. So if you fire Majestic, they will get stunned if they get hit with both. So it's not a useless weapon, but there are just some builds that this weapon is really frustrating to use against. Little Gem. It's just kind of a worse version of both of these two. I'm gonna put it in C tier. It's probably better than the Moonlight, but it's like it's just a worse bazooka. If you're gonna use a bazooka, probably want to use the Majestic or the Zwanga, or the next weapon on our list, the Jav Alpha. I think the Jav Alpha is right up here next to the Majestic. I'm gonna say it's worse. Majestic is a little bit more consistent. Jav Alpha has a much smaller proc stat at 5 meters, and it's heavier. But it has a massive upfront stagger of like 13k or 1.3k. If you hit this weapon, your opponent will be really upset. And if you hit 2 in a row, they're going to be stunned and taking a bunch of damage. And if you use it to punish, they're going to take a million damage. So it's pretty good in the right build. It's got the same problem as the Majestic, where it's really hard to get hit against some builds. But I don't really think that disqualifies it from being a usable weapon in the B tier. But it is, again, it's going to be really frustrating in some builds, so it's not A tier, it's not S tier. I don't even know what this weap's called, but this is the handheld grenade, the heavier one. I'm just going to put this in C tier below this bazooka. It's just too heavy to really be reasonable, and its reload is way too long. It's probably worse than the chainsaw. It's probably around these rifles. It's just the reload really gimps this weapon. A version of this weapon and also it doesn't have the nice grenade detonation that the Dizzy has. So this weapon has like an effective range out to like 600 meters or something, which means it never blows itself up. So you usually just fire it and it whizzes right past your opponent. It doesn't even hit them. The Dizzy is a weapon that doesn't have that problem, although I can't say. I'm going to put it somewhere at the bottom of B tier. I think it's secretly usable, but I don't think it's that good. It has a not a proc stat, it has a maximum range of like 280 meters or something. And then it has a 90 meter detonation radius, which means at 280 meters it blows up and it deals damage to everything that's 90 meters around it. This is like a real feature to the weapon, so you can fire it past people and hit them in the back. But it is really hard to use. It doesn't work against all builds, and this weapon is ridiculously heavy with a long cooldown. So it has a lot of downsides if you're trying to make this work. If you get it to work, the upside is massive. You do a lot of damage, a lot of stagger, and it's very difficult to deal with, even with like shields and things like this, because you can hit behind them or just catch them in the AoE and they can't run away. But generally, like, again, it can have the same problem where it just whizzes past the opponent, doesn't do anything in closer ranges, and really fast opponents can still just dodge out of the AoE when you fire it because it's very slow. The Iridium. I want the Iridium to be good. It's kind of just a worse version of the Dizzy. It's lighter, so you could fit it on more builds, but it has every single problem the Dizzy has, worse, because it's only a 60 meter detonation radius. And it's like it also blows up closer to you, like 20 meters. So your opponents have more time to close the gap and put it into its range where it's really not that useful. I don't remember this called, like the Curai, the flame grenades. This weapon is absolutely terrible. I'm gonna say it's somewhere around the stun baton Rensetsu AR level. You avoid this weapon, but just by flying up off the ground. It doesn't really do anything in the air. It doesn't really do very much damage. Your opponent kind of has to be an idiot to stand in it. It's bad. I do not recommend using this weapon. It's very funny in team games when people just stand in it and you kill them, but just use something else. Smoke launcher. This weapon's great. It's up here in S tier or in A tier. It's not S tier because there is counterplay and it's like not super consistent. You have to be like a god to use it, but it is in A tier for sure. I'm gonna say it's up here with the RJ Kick Cheese. This weapon is very, very effective at disorienting your opponent, especially if they use hard lock, and it can just blank missiles. You can blow it up in midair by using the charge shot. It's really, really good. I've seen a build that does smoke launcher, pulse scutum. Pulse scutum is the permanent shield that just sits above your character, and it just like like an LRB, which is a really powerful laser we'll get to later, and smoke behind a scutum. So you just cycle, you fire a smoke, then you switch to the LRB, you shoot your LRB until your opponent is annoyed, and then you switch back to the smoke whenever it's off cooldown, and you just constantly terrorize your opponent by chipping at them and hiding in your little smoke grenade. I think this weapon is really, really good. It's really hard to use, but I want to say if you want to play like the most annoying, frustrating playstyle possible, you should pick this thing up because it is absolutely that. It's also cool in combination with the oscillator. There's a guy on YouTube called Panda Man. You should check him out. He uses smoke and oscillator to do horrible things to people and make them alt F4 his games because they don't want to play against him anymore. Moving on to the Therapist. I'm going to say this weapon's an A tier as well. It's very consistent. It's probably up here near the top. Really consistent damage. Kites use it. It's probably better than these rifles for the rifle kites. You could just like quick boost back a whole bunch and blast Therapists at people and do a bunch of electricity buildup and stagger, and it's really frustrating to play against and very consistent. But I think it only really works on kites. So like you can't really do the uppy downy like heavyweight build that does this anymore since they nerfed it in 1.06.1, but those 2 days of it being good in 1.06 were awesome. And I still think it's good. It's actually still just usable. Plus, they nerfed it this patch, on the fire rate, which my sources tell me makes it better because now it lines up better with assault boost patterns and missile launches. So I think it's only just for like the mental game, but I think it matters. Anyway, I'm going to put this weapon in A. I think it's really good. Flamethrower. I'm going to put this weapon... I haven't seen a lot of use of this since 1.06. I'm going to say it's probably somewhere in B tier. It's like a usable weapon. It's really annoying and it covers your screen in garbage. It's probably more consistent than the bazookas. But I just don't think you're like really in the market for this against some of the top tier builds. I don't really think this does anything to them. You know, you chase a lamb down with a flamethrower or a pulse shield build. Like maybe it's good against pulse shield because it kind of like heats them up and sets them up to be staggered and have their shield turned off, but I haven't found a use case for it yet. So I'm going to just stick it in B tier because it is annoying. It is kind of cool. I do think it is a good weapon, but I haven't seen the use case yet, so I'm going to leave it down in here. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so we have some more room. All right, moving on to lasers. Laser rifle. I think this weapon's good now. I think it's going to be around here near the rifle kites. I think it's actually better than, probably better. It's at least better than this rifle. I don't think it's better than the Harris, but this laser pumps damage. You put on the VE20B generator, it makes lasers do more damage, and this thing is going to be probably very effective at just dealing tons of damage to your opponent while you kite away. I don't know if it does anything else. The charge shot feels really good. I don't know if they changed it. But yeah, I think this is a good weapon. There might be a build waiting out there that takes this weapon higher than B tier. Like it might be higher than I'm putting it here, but I haven't seen that build yet. So I'm going to safely leave it in B tier, say it's a good kiting weapon, shoot back, but like kiting builds are like not really builds. At least they haven't been for a long time. But I could see the potential of this weapon showing up in higher tier play. So be on the lookout for laser rifles, and if you want to try a weapon out that not a lot of people use but might be sleeper OP, this is a really good candidate here because it just got buffed. LRA. LRA is like fine. It's going to be probably around the laser rifle. I know that it's good at doing damage. I know that it's good at staggering. I know that it gets outclassed by the LRB. And it has a pretty strong charge shot. I think usually people just use LRBs instead of the LRA, but I'm going to say it's near the bottom of A tier because I know it is a very good weapon. And that's just the decision I'm going to make. Moving on to the LRB, S tier weapon. This, I think, is the best weapon in the game right now. I think the LRB does a lot of damage, and with the VB20 generator, it does even more damage. And it just is generally, it has a fast enough muzzle velocity to hit a lot of players, and it is really effective against pulse shields. Is one of the best parts in the game. I think if you're looking for the best weapon in the game, you're going to have a hard argument saying it's not the LRB. I can't believe it hasn't been nerfed yet, but it is what it is. It's the LRB. It's just a really simple DPS weapon, does a lot of damage, is good into pulse shield, and you're going to see a lot of builds running this, I think, for this patch. Laser shotgun. This weapon is hilarious. I'm going to put it in B tier, around the Majestic and the Jalfa. I think it's probably worse than the Majestic, probably better than the Jalfa. Huge problem with this weapon is that if you use the charge shot a lot, you will run out of ammo. I hope that they fix this because I like using this weapon, but you do not have that many shots. It does a ton of damage, and it does a lot of stagger to go with it. So you can, and it fires really fast, so you can really pump some damage really fast with this weapon before it overheats. But it doesn't have proc stack like the Majestic does or the Jalfa, but it's pretty fast. It does a lot of damage. Use it in close range. I don't know about the tap fire where you just use it as a shotgun. I've seen people like juggle shotguns before, which is kind of good, but I think it's the real meat and potatoes for this weapon is the charge shot, and it's good, but it runs out of ammo, and it kind of feels like cheese. It's probably not good against a lot of builds. But it is really cool. It's really fun. This is my favorite. Well, I don't know if it's my favorite weapon in the game. It's definitely one of my favorite weapons in the game, and I highly recommend at least trying it out if you haven't tried it out before and seeing if you like it as well. I hope somebody finds a really competitive build with this because it's a blast to use. The Wooger. I'm going to demote the Wooger from S tier. I don't think it's actually S tier. I think I was wrong in the past when I said it was. I think it's going to be better than the Hammer now because the Hammer has been nerfed and it has a little bit of hit stun. It's probably better than RJ Kicks. Put it down here in A tier. Big problem with the Wooger is that it is just not that effective against pulse shields, and it is not that effective against kites. People can actually get out of this weapon. When it works, it's great. You get a hit stun, you get a ton of damage, a ton of stagger, and it has an incredibly powerful punish. But when it doesn't work, it feels really bad. And usually when there's a build that it doesn't work against, you're not going to get it to work for the entire match. So you're just sitting there tap firing a Wooger, and it just feels like you hit one laser every once in a while. It feels pretty bad. But I do think it is still an A tier weapon. Like it blanks a lot of builds. It's still usable in those cases. Even in its off cases, you can tap fire it. But I think there are better options, and I challenge you to do really well with this weapon and prove me wrong, because it is really good, but it is not. I think it is no longer in my S tier. Laser pistol. I don't know what to think about this weapon. I'm going to put it somewhere down here with the Curtis and the other weapons that do damage, and I don't know what to think about. It's probably better than all of these because it just pumps damage. And you don't really have to be an assault boost to use it. But, you know, it's just a laser pistol. It does what it says on the tin, and you shoot lasers at somebody and it does damage, but it doesn't do anything impressive other than that. It's just like a damage machine, and it's not even like that spectacular damage, right? Like, you're way better off if you just want to pump damage using the LRB and getting some like evasiveness in between your shots, or using a pulse shield or something. A lot of these sustained fire weapons are really held back by the fact that you frequently want a pulse shield on your left side, on your left shoulder, which means you can only be firing one of these weapons at a time, and you'll want weapons like the LRB on your left arm so that you can hide them under your pulse gun and only use them sparingly when your opponent doesn't have weapons up. Plasma gun. I think this is usable, like there's a use case for it, but it's somewhere down here. It's probably better than punching and the redshift. It's probably better than these rifles and the laser gun. I think it's somewhere around here in the middle of B tier. This thing has a really good charge shot. It fills the screen with garbage that your opponent doesn't want to be standing in, but it kind of gets outclassed by the Nebula, and in general, I don't think this weapon is like, I don't think you really justify using this weapon over the Nebula given how good the Nebula is. This is just kind of my take on it. Although I have seen people use it, so clearly there are use cases. The AoE is a lot bigger, especially when you aim it at the ground, but I think you're probably better off just using the Nebula. Speaking of Nebula, this is an S tier weapon. Nebula is really, really good. I'm going to put it just behind the LRB. The proc stat on this thing makes it really nice, so you just like fire it off and you're pretty guaranteed to have it explode next to your opponent and deal a bunch of stagger and impact and damage. It's not like a crazy amount of stagger and impact and damage, but it's very consistent, which makes it an S tier weapon, because there is not a lot of consistent weapons in this game. The Rebula, speaking of a downgrade, this weapon is unreliable. I want it to be. I mean, it does a lot of punish damage, so it is probably up here somewhere. I'm going to say it is around these rifles. I actually think it is worse than all of these like weird DPS weapons that don't really work, because the Rebula's muzzle velocity is pathetic. This weapon has the upsides of not caring about your opponent's defense and having an incredible amount of punish damage if you stagger somebody, but man, do you have to do a lot of work to get this weapon to work. The charge shot is even like just pathetically slow. It has no proc stat. It does, like, the only thing this thing has going for it is damage. If you can hit your opponent, this weapon is great, but you are probably going to be missing every shot you take with this thing, and it is going to frustrate the hell out of you. A version of this weapon that doesn't have that problem is the Walter rifle. It also has some other use cases that are really nice, but it is really heavy. I'm going to put it up here with this plasma thrower. I think it's a bit better. This weapon's third charge can be really good for building up stagger at longer ranges while your opponents are closing on you. Its charge shot is very similar to the Rebula, where It has a lot of stagger punish damage and a lot of upfront damage and stagger. And its basic shot has more muzzle velocity now, so it's actually like significantly more effective. All of this stuff put together, I don't think really makes up for the fact that it just weighs a ton. And it really imposes a lot of build requirements on your build, and it makes it difficult to use. If you're looking for a weapon like this, you very frequently just want to be using the LRB. Unless you really want that big noodle spam that it does. But it's not useless. There are definitely builds that use this, and I think that the buffs have helped it a bit be a more viable, but I don't think they've fixed like the problems with this weapon. The Kurosawa. All right, this is probably going to be one of the hottest takes in the video. I'm going to put this weapon very high tier. I'm going to put this weapon. I think it's actually good. I think it's actually going to be an A tier. Put it above the LRA, above the Viento. It's going to be around here with this thing, Sweet 16. It's not proven yet, so I'm going to put it behind the Sweet 16. I think this weapon is going to show up and be really powerful this patch. They really fixed some of the downtime that it had with the charge shot. It now has increased cooling while it's overheated, which makes it like a much better weapon. It was really horrible to use the charge shot before and just have like 8 seconds of downtime. It's still a lot of downtime, but it's less, and I think that with the changes to like the VE20C and like some of the other weapons, and the fact that you can hide this behind a shield and charge it, and shields are still very good, I think this weapon is going to show up and actually be good in some builds. So I'm probably going to be looking for playing this weapon just to try it out and get a build that works, because it's really satisfying to use when it works. Yeah, I recommend trying it out as well, especially with all the FCS changes and stuff. I think this weapon will show up. That said, it's still really unreliable, so like, you know, if somebody just quick boosts out of the Kurosawa, like, you're just going to be really sad. So I wouldn't necessarily say like you know, this is going to be the best weapon in the game, but I think it is going to be really good. And it's going to be really nice hiding behind pulse shields specifically. Although, once again, it's probably outclassed by the LRB. Just to be really clear, like, whenever you're using this weapon, you could be using this weapon. And this weapon is crazy. So, like, please don't sleep on the LRB. Pulse guns. These are effective at their job. I'm going to put them around here. They're probably better than the stagger punishes and the tank kick and the cocklets and the stronga. Oh my god, this weapon's like better than I think it is. I'm gonna put it somewhere around here. I think these are a little bit, no, this one's back here. There's another one that's better. This weapon's really good for pressuring pulse shields. You have to be firing something else that makes your opponent actually use their pulse shield while you're using it, because otherwise they'll just get hit with it and it doesn't do that much. I mean, it does damage, but like, you're not going to be hitting that much with it, and it can get thrown off by recoil, so you need to be really careful. But it does what it says on the tin. It is oppressive against pulse shields. This one's a little bit worse because it only works at closer ranges. But the other pulse gun, which I can zoom out to show you, is a bit better. I'm going to post that one up now as well. I'm going to say this one's actually more effective than most of these weapons. Probably better than rifle kites. It's probably around near where the Etsugen is. I'm going to say the Etsugen, you can really just run 2 Etsugens instead of running this. So the Etsugen's a bit better, but this weapon is really good at pressuring shields. Again, it's not super effective if your opponent doesn't have a shield. But it does like peel off their PA or just like pump some damage, so it's not useless. But this is a good weapon. This one's significantly better than this one just because it has a bigger projectile and longer range, and it is like a little bit less affected by recoil. So this one is really good because of the reload, but again, it's shorter range and tiny projectiles. A lot of them miss, so I would recommend this one over it. Moving on to the hand missiles. The MLT, nobody really uses the MLT, but it's a fine weapon. Put it up here somewhere. It's probably not as good as the rifle kites, probably better than the flamethrower. MLT is just a nice 4 missiles that you can fire from your hand. They're strong, they're pretty easily avoided, but they're totally viable. you can run these as a hand missile, and you're not going to be upset about it. Probably a little bit outclassed by the spread missile. The hand missile for the spread missile is pretty good. I'm going to say it's better than the rifle kites. You see it a lot. It's probably actually just an A tier weapon, and it's an proven A tier weapon. So I'm going to put it up here with the shotguns. And it's above the laser dagger, and it's above the OCI. I don't think it's quite as good as kicking, but yeah, this is a proven A tier weapon. The spread missile for your hand. A lot of times you want to mix missiles, so you'll see like both of these on like pure missile builds. But this is probably the hand missile of choice. I see Goma using this on ladder a lot. It's a little bit oppressive. You could fire it past someone and the missiles will chase them while they're chasing at you. So this is a missile I recommend. This is probably the hand missile I recommend if you're going to be playing that. It's pretty effective. It's not like it's not foolproof. It can still just be dodged. So, but that kind of goes for almost every single weapon in the game. So that's my opinion on this hand spread missile. The aperitif. This is a good weapon. I'm going to say it's like a niche weapon. It's somewhere around here. It's probably a little bit less good than the hand missile. But I've seen people like set up aperitifs and use very specialized builds to like stun you in them and get you hit by them, or cut you through them. So this weapon is like pretty good. It's usable. It does a lot of stagger and damage, but missiles are very easily evaded, so you usually require some setup to get this thing to work. But again, it's a usable weapon, perfectly valid in V tier. You can see people with it and probably not think that they are suspicious players. FOW. FOW is also a good weapon. I'm going to put it up here. It's probably the best hand missile. FOW is good for putting pressure on pulse shields as well as just putting pressure on lights in general. It's got a very interesting missile pattern. And while I don't think it's like an exceptional weapon, I do think it is an effective weapon. But it's not really exciting. Like, there's nothing interesting about the FOW. Nothing super exciting. You can do like some kind of crazy like manual charge shots with it. I have seen players do this, but it isn't super reliable. It requires a lot of skill. And in general, I don't think the reward is like all that high. But I'm sure people will argue with me about that because there are some players who really love this weapon. Biggest downside of this weapon is that it feels like a gun that is defender-sided. So like sometimes you just use the charge shot and you blast all 6 shots into them and nothing happens because on their screen they dodged it. So I can't rate it above B tier, but it is technically just a good weapon. Okay, moving on. Pulse shield. This weapon's S tier. It's going to be behind the LRB, but just barely. Still one of the best parts in the game. It's not the single best part in the game anymore because it got nerfed by like 17% or so. So it has a little bit less uptime if you're pressuring it, but still great. Blocks all the hit stun in the game. Just like totally blanks damage. It has crazy uptime. It makes midweights viable. It's really good. I highly recommend using it. The nerfs didn't really hit it too hard. I don't think you will be dissatisfied using a pulse shield. This is the slightly lighter pulse shield. I think it's called the Suck, but it doesn't suck. It's just it's not as good. I'm gonna put it at like the bottom of A tier. Nobody really uses it. It's just outclassed by the pulse shield. Use the pulse shield, but it's good. Probably if you run it, like if you have weight considerations or energy considerations, you won't. I don't think you'll be disappointed by this weapon. Round shield. I think this weapon's secretly usable, but I'm gonna put it down here with the Iridium because it's probably just a pet weapon for me. It's cool because it like constantly pops up. I think it's good with like a quick boosting build where you just hold it down and you quick boost a lot, and it's constantly popping up in Instant Guard because it has a lot of activations. But it's going to overheat eventually, so it's just kind of like a static shield that you have on. I mean, it's probably better than these two, but it's like somewhere around here where it's like a niche cheese thing to do. It is really, I do actually genuinely think it's viable. I think you can use this part. This is not a weapon; it's a shield. But it's really niche. You're gonna have to build a very specialized build for it, and it's like the upside is like not all that impressive. Parry shield. I'm going to say this weapon it's probably a slightly better shield than this lightweight version of the PS. This shield completely blocks all damage for like 0.4 seconds when you deploy it. It doesn't do jack shit otherwise, so if you don't undeploy it after that time, it's going to get blown up and broken. But it did get a buff this patch where you can deploy it more often, and it like actually completely blanks the damage. So there's not like it's not like the pulse shield where you still have some residual stagger that just gets stuck left on you. This thing like basically erases your opponent's attack. So it's good. I'm going to need to see more data on it because I don't think the activations are really high enough for it to be that good, because you can only activate it like 2 or 3 times. But I do think that it is usable. I do think it can, in some cases, compete with the pulse shield. But I think this is going to generally outclass it for most builds. This is the other buckler. Not the parry shield, but the I think it's the Sut Q or something. I'm going to say this one is up here. It's a little bit easier to use than this parry buckler. I think it's an A tier. I think it's a good part. I think it's going to be competing with the pulse shield. But I don't think it's proven to be better than the pulse shield. I think it has some build restrictions, mainly that it is up for 1.4 seconds, which means there's 1.4 seconds where you're not allowed to be using your left arm weapon, or you're not getting full value out of this thing. And it only has 3 activations before it overheats, probably only 2 because you're going to not want it to overheat so that you can use it again later sooner. But I do think it is usable, and I think you'll probably see builds using this, and I think you'll probably see builds using this effectively. Although they're going to be more specialized than the builds that use the pulse shield. Scutum. This is also up here in A tier. I actually think that, it's a B tier. You have to build your build really specialized around it. I don't think it's A tier. I jumped to the gun there. You have to really specialize your build around it. It is a proven specialization, so I guess I'll put it above this shield. But if you successfully specialize your build around it, like you use another really, really good weapon like the smoke launcher or something to keep your opponent's uptime low, the Scutum can be very effective. It does completely change the game, so you're just playing around like, don't overheat my Scutum, please don't stun me, don't hit me in the back with anything. But I do think it is a usable weapon. You just need a specialized build to do it. I'm going to also put the Coral Shield down here. This is just like the pile of shields that are good with some builds, but not most builds. Coral Shield, I think, is good on tanks. And it can be good if you have 2 weapons that you need to be firing at the same time and have a shield. It might help you use some of these more sustained fire weapons and actually find a use case for them, because you'll be able to blast while you pop your shield. Big problem with this is that it's very limited activations compared to the pulse shield. It doesn't get affected by pulse interference, so if the pulse guns start to become really popular, the Coral Shield might show up a little bit more. But it has some build restrictions just given the energy it requires to use it, and it is pretty bad if you leave it up too long. Like if you leave it up too long and your opponent shoots it while it is not in instant guard, you're going to regret that, because you're going to build up a lot of stagger, and that stagger is not going to go away. All right, that is all the shields. Moving on to the cannons. This Gatling cannon is somewhere around, it's almost exactly the same as the Ludlow. I've used these two in concert together. I think the Ludlow is like probably a little bit better. But this Gatling cannon is like usable. The most annoying part about this weapon is that it has a startup. It has like some startup frames, so when you start to use it, it like actually has to ready itself. And that's fine when it's already readied itself, but when you like need it to already be ready and it is not ready, it feels like shit. So I can't put it above B tier. I do think it's usable, but I don't think it's good. And I think there's like builds that just don't care about this. Like, so what? You're pumping a bunch of bullets at me and like trying to stun me, and someone's just blasting you with LRBs and out DPSing you. Even if you get the stun off, you might lose to the DPS race to these LRBs. So it's like a B tier weapon. It's like, it's usable, but it's nothing exceptional. Morley, this weapon got buffed. It's pretty good now. I'm gonna put it somewhere near the bottom of A tier. I'm gonna say it's around here. I don't think it's going to be as good as the Sawa is, but it's like one of these new weapons that's like not yet proven, but It did get buffed, and it is a lot more usable now. The spread and explosive damage is really nice. I've seen some clips of this, like just chipping people at very long range, and it is kind of cute. So I think that this is usable. I think it's usable on quads. I'm not sure if it can go above here. I don't know if it's like usable on most builds. I think you should just like be a quad or a tank and like pump Morleys at people. But and I don't know if that's going to be enough to beat like lightweight kites or lambs. But I do think it is a nice weapon now, and it is like got a real place in the metagame, being lower weight and having better spread and damage. Earshot. Earshot's great. There's nothing really wrong with this weapon. It gets blanked by pulse shields, but you can aim around them if you're good at manual aim. Problem is if they're in the air, but then you can usually stagger them and use it as a punish. I think this weapon's really good. I think I'm going to put it near the Sweet 16. I think it's a little bit less consistent than the Sweet 16, but it's a great weapon. Does a lot of stagger damage. And it does have a really long cooldown. But, you know, it does what it's supposed to do. You can aim it at the ground and just, like, one-shot somebody. So it's pretty good. You're going to need to be have a really specialized build to use this, but... like, you know, all the way up through like A rank, you're just going to be blasting people. You're not really going to have trouble until you get to S rank and people start blocking stuff with shields. I want this weapon to be good. I don't think it's good yet. I'm going to put it down here. Songbirds is cool. It blows up. It's actually C tier. It's not really up there. I think it's better than the Little Gem because it does nothing really does what this does, where it just like carpet bombs the ground. But it doesn't. It's not going to hit anybody in the air, and it's not that impressive even when it hits, so it's just like not really a usable weapon. It's passable, like you can get it to work, but it's not like an amazing weapon. You're not going to be super thrilled with it, I think, if you try to use it online. So now let's get a little bit more room. Stun needle launcher. This weapon's really bad. It's just the cannon that doesn't do a lot of damage. Just use like the LCS or something if you want a cannon that does a lot of damage. It's kind of got cool punish when you stun somebody, but like it's not that much more impressive than weapons that are way more consistent than it. I'm gonna say it's probably worse than the chainsaw. It's just, you know, it's a nice punish weapon kind of, but not like actually. Can't fix that, can I? Okay, I'm gonna have S tier a little bit cut off here. LCS. I love the LCS. I think it's S tier. No, it's not S tier. I think it's A tier. It doesn't hit opponents that run away from you very well. When it hits, it's really good. It pumps damage. It's really good into shields. But I'm biased by thinking it's S tier. It's definitely just A tier. I'm going to say it's worse than the hammer. Probably it's between quad kick and biped kick. So it's like better than biped. It's better than biped kick, but it's worse than quad kick. It's just like a consistent DPS weapon. It doesn't work against everybody. You could charge shot it and hit some kites sometimes, and if you're really good with it, you can like land more shots. But the Ocellus nerf, it's like worse than it was before, and it just struggles into some matchups where they try to run away from you. So that's why it's down here in A tier. LRA, this is probably just a better, like this is another laser cannon. It's around where the LCS is. I'm gonna say it's actually like a bit better. This weapon is seeing rise in popularity. I say it's up around here with the Wooger, where it has like some problems, but I think in general the LRA is really good. You only really need to land it once to win a match, and it does a crazy amount of damage and stagger. And you don't really need to run two. You can just like run one and like sometimes just like randomly win with it. Usually you only see it on tanks, or I don't think you're even going to see it on quads. It's just really, really heavy, and there's like no point running it if you're not also already just a tank. But this is a very effective weapon on tanks, so I think the LRA is great, and I'm going to put it up here in A tier. LCB. Oh, this is the LCA, sorry. This is the LCS and LCA. Laser Cannon Array. I need to use my brain. LCB. LCB is kind of just a worse LCS now, worse LRA. I'm going to say it's somewhere in B tier. It's a little bit more effective than like the Majestic, And the flamethrower, this thing, it's like worse than these missiles though. So this is a nice setup weapon. If you charge it and manual aim it, it's pretty strong. But the reload rate really kills this thing. It's not very effective into pulse shields anymore. But it is still like a really strong attack if you hit people with it. It can just like instantly stun people. It has a big projectile size. So like there's use cases for it, but I don't necessarily think it's like a super effective weapon. Give me 1 second. All right, moving on to the LCD. The LCD is, I'm going to put it just like right next to the LCS. It's a little bit worse. I think the damage and stagger is better, but it kind of has the same problems the LCS has, where it doesn't really hit all the time. And the charge shot's a little bit better, and I think the cooling's better, but it's just really, really similar to this weapon. It also has a longer stance time. It drives me crazy when people use the LCS. Like, I have the build with Zims and an LCS, and you instantly stun people. And when people use the LCD instead, they miss a lot, and they don't know why, and it's because the stance is longer. So it's just easier to punish you. Your stance is longer, you're not as mobile. So I think the LCS is a little bit better, but this weapon is still pretty good. It's very, very similar. Fasan. I think the Fasan's really good. I'm not going to say it's A tier, or it's S tier, but I think it is A tier. I think it's probably better than the LCA. The Fasan is really, really good in the hands of a skilled player. You can manual aim it and fire it at ridiculous ranges and have it blow up and do a 90-meter AoE where you stun and damage, or stagger and damage people. Additionally, you can just like fire it at your feet, make your own assault armor, and you can use it as a stagger punish too, and it just does crazy damage. So Fasan's really good. It's A tier. There are definitely builds where the Fasan kind of feels useless, so I'm not going to put it in S tier, but even against those builds, if you have other weapons that can set up a stagger, you can use it as a stagger punish. It's decently effective. The Cranch. Cranch is pretty good, actually. I think it's a really good shield counter. I'm going to put it somewhere in A tier. Where in A tier? I think it's like around, it's probably better than the Aussie. It's probably worse than this missile launcher. So the Cranch is just like a nice, consistent shield punisher. It's really nice that you can have it on your shoulder and use it instead of like while using two different hand weapons. So I see a lot of people run the Cranch and eggs, for instance, and just use it to peel off a shield while somebody's trying to block the eggs. I recommend this weapon as a shield counter. It doesn't really do anything else, but that's kind of enough. The pulse shield's one of the best parts in the game. There are going to be a lot of people using it, so I think that the Cranch is probably the best counter that you could be trying to play. And I recommend like 1 Cranch, pulse shield, and 2 eggs is like a really good build. You can go check out AC Discord in the description, ACD, and talk to people about it in below, and they're all huge fans of this weapon combo in there, and they'll praise you just for bringing it up, I swear. Pulse shield launcher. I think this weapon is like kind of good. It's another one of these like really niche shields. I'm gonna say it's probably better than it's probably worse than the Scudum. I've seen the Scudum used a little bit more effectively, but it's like one of these niche shields. You can just like kite people through it, and it's really annoying. And if you're like a giga good player, you could probably use it effectively, but it's never really going to give you the same kind of value as like the smoke launcher. Although, you know, it could fit in a build with the smoke launcher, and you could just be an annoying menace, constantly dropping pulse shields and smoke and making your opponent have to use their brain to figure out how to get to you. But it's going to require a lot of brain work on your side as well, and I just, you know, I don't have time for that. I don't like thinking. So I'm going to put it down here in B tier. But I do think it's usable. I think you could find a build that uses this effectively online. The Aurora. The Aurora's fine. It's like a bottom of the road missile launcher. It does pressure. It does damage, but they all hit at the same time, so you can just block it with pulse shield. I'm gonna put it somewhere around here. I think it's gonna be a little bit worse than this, like just traditional stagger punishes that like one-shot people. It's mostly a stagger punish. It can force QBs, but it's not really gonna be carrying you. It's just like a weapon. And also it has a generator requirement, so it's like pretty limited to be able to run this thing. MLT4. MLT4 is fine. It's not going to be doing much. Again, it's like a little bit more. This is like going to be my area for just like consistent weapons that just do what they say on the tin. It's just going to pump damage. I'm going to put it like around here in the middle of B tier. It's more consistent than the Walter rifle, but it's not doing anything impressive. This is a little bit more impressive when you have the right build for it. MLT 6. I mean, it's not MLT. It's like some other missile, but this is the 4-pack. 6-pack missile. I'm going to say this one's a little bit better. This is probably up here with like the hand missiles. This is just a nice missile for pumping stagger and damage. It's really good because it can't be interrupted by like stance weapons or anything like that. So you just like fire all 6 and then go back to stancing. So this is nice if you just want some aggressive missiles to try and pump stagger your opponent. It gives them another thing to think about. It does damage and builds up stagger, and that's what you want it for. It is not that interesting, but it is effective. 10-pack, this is like the same thing, but a little bit better. I'm going to say it's an A tier. There's a big disadvantage to the 10-pack, which is that I think it's actually just going to be worse than all the shields, though. The 10-pack can get interrupted by stance weapons. So if you're firing a stanced LRB, as is often the case with this weapon, you can interrupt it if you take a charge shot. So you need to be careful with the 10-pack to not cancel your own attacks. There are other actions that interrupt it as well, but frequently you'll just use it while in assault boost flying towards somebody. And in that case, it's just going to be blasting. Spread missiles. These are pretty good. I'm going to say they're like very similar to the Aurora, where they're just like decent missiles that you can equip. All of the missiles just end up sort of in the same tier, in the same area. I think these are a little bit better than the Aurora because they don't have the build requirements. Say the same thing for these single spread missiles and the larger dual spread missiles, which I think are probably the best just because of I think building up more stagger at once is better with this specific type of missile. So yeah, they're just basic missiles. They blow up in a flower and then chase somebody behind. They're good at when people are running at you, and sometimes they get around shields, but not very frequently. So they're like better than the Aurora, but again, you can just dodge these. They're just missiles. All the missiles in the game can be pretty easily dodged. Usually your opponents, or you, if you were the missile player, have to set up some kind of frame trap in order to get hit by some of the missiles. That said, you can just blast these and set up in the skybox and kill a lot of players, so can't say that they're bad. They're just fine. Duos. These are like slightly worse missiles. They're like not as easy to use as the Aurora, so I'll put them like slightly below. I think these are better than these because they have higher uptime. The big problem with the duos is that if you use them up close while your opponent is near you, your opponent, they could just like fly past your opponent and never really make it back to them. So it's better to use them at like further away, but they did get a buff this patch, so they are slightly better. And they weren't really bad in the first place. Like in threes, these are really, really effective for cleaning people. They have some of the best guidance. They like hit the most when they're in their correct range that you're firing them, but very frequently you will have your opponent be too close to you for them to be too effective. Verts. Now we're here, finally. Let's zoom out a little bit. Vertical missiles are worse than nothing. Each one is worse than the last. Do not equip vertical missiles. They take up weight, and they are completely useless. They will never hit your target. All your target needs to do for vertical missiles is move like 5 meters. They turn off at like some ridiculous number, like 150 meters or something, fall on your opponent, they don't fall on your opponent, they fall on the ground next to your opponent and make you mad. Don't equip these. Active homing missiles. I think this new active homing missile is really good. I'm going to put it up in A tier. I think it's really, really effective. I think it's good to see it along with the MLT-10. You can just blast this over and over and over, and it chases your opponent down. I think it's better than the Duo because it has a shorter lock time. You're going to have more of them coming from different angles, so I definitely recommend this active homing missile. It does a lot of damage and stagger, and it's got a ton of uptime, and it chases your opponent down and is terrorizing. The dual one's probably down here. It's a good missile to mix in with other missile combos, but it's not doing anything super impressive. I think you should just use the single so you have it coming from more angles, because they like this one reloads longer, so you could just have a similar number of missiles, but having them coming from different angles is better. Missile pod. This thing is kind of good. I've seen players use it, but never like overly effectively. I'm gonna put it down here. It's not really as good as all this other stuff. It's like a pet weapon. Like I've seen people use it, and like set up areas that you can't enter, but it's really, really heavy. It does have the lowest energy usage in the game, so there's cases where like sometimes it feels like this is the best in slot thing you can put on your build, but in general, I'm going to say it's not like a really popular weapon, and it's not like super good. It's just somewhere middling. Delivery boy. This weapon's terrible. It's not like completely useless, but it's close. It's going to be somewhere around here with the Curai. I think it's maybe a little bit better, but this thing just like never hits your opponent. It isn't even that impressive when it hits. Don't equip this. It's crap. It takes forever to lock on. It's just never worth it. Soup. I'm going to say Soup is a very good missile. It's just kind of middling with all these other missiles, though. But it can be equipped as like a single one of and chase people down. It's like quite nice. And it's probably better than all these spread missiles and stuff, but it's just a missile. Another missile option. It's worth the wait. It's pretty good against some builds, like builds that go in a straight line without quick boosting a lot. It's trivial to dodge with quick boost, but it has a lot of uptime, so it does like add something to your build to use it. Jav B. Jav B's fine. It's not what it used to be. It's a shadow of its former self. It might make it still just better than the Soup. It's just another missile to mix in. It does have some cool stuff where it like can like set up your opponent and do a burst of stagger or a burst of punish. You can combine it with the hammer to do combos. Like there's lots of like interesting stuff you can do with it, but it's not as oppressive as it used to be. And it's just like a general middling weapon now. Treno. I don't think this weapon's super good. I think it's just a worse version of the Aurora usually. I guess you can use it for stagger punish, but it's like kind of a pet weapon. I mean, it's usable, so I'm going to put it in B tier, but it's not going to be super high in B tier. It's probably better than all these things. Yeah, it's just like around here. I think this Walter weapon is going to be better. But the Treno is, it's reasonable stagger punish. It doesn't really do anything else. It can force like lambs and stuff to quick boost, but it's got very low uptime, so it's not like an amazingly effective weapon. Pulse missile. This missile is really good. It's up here in A tier. I think it's a little bit better than the MLT-10 in some cases. It's good for chasing down lights. It's good for just applying pressure. It has a big AoE. You never really use this 5 stack versus the 3 stack. You pretty much always use this version because it doesn't matter that there's 5 missiles here versus 3 missiles here. Just being in the AoE is what does damage. So it's like the same damage all around whether you're in more than one AoE or not. I'm going to put this one in B tier. It's just like it's got an interesting spread, I guess, but it's just outclassed by the regular pulse missile. Moving on to the vertical pulse missile. Let's zoom out just a little bit more. I can zoom back in. The VPM is a nice partner to the pulse missile, but it's not really as effective. It's going to be just somewhere in this missile tier. I think it doesn't quite hit that much, but it does like a very interesting and unique job, so I'm going to put it around here with the duos. If people are hiding behind cover, it does a good job fishing them out, especially if they're on the ground, but you can kind of just fly up and avoid it, so it's not unavoidable. Good players won't tend to get hit with this too much. I'm also going to, yeah, that's fine. Just leave it down here. Coral Missile. I think this is an S tier weapon. One of the few S tier weapons left. It's probably near like the bottom of S tier, but it's pretty good. I'll put it behind the Nebula. Coral Missiles applies a lot of pressure. The little squigglers that come out of it and can like stagger you into the combo where it hits you and does a crazy amount of damage. If it is like have a pretty significant build requirement, you have to use a very specific FCS to make it work. But I think the Coral Missile is an effective weapon. I think it's S tier. I think it's just oppressive and annoying. It's like relatively easy to dodge, but it is the best missile for applying pressure to your opponent. So I think it makes sense for it to be an S tier to me. But again, I'm going to say I'm a little bit biased. I play a lot of Rushdown This missile kills me a lot. It might not be as good as I think it is. I do think it is really good because of the coral little squigglers that come around and can hit people from behind. But take this opinion specifically with a grain of salt. My playstyle is annoyed by this build. Huxley. It's a good way to build stagger. It's a good replacement for a missile. I'm going to put it in A tier. I think it's like a good weapon, but it's not like an overly impressive weapon. It's just going to be somewhere around here. It's just another good way to maintain stagger. It has a pretty low uptime, so you have to toggle it on and off a lot. And if you get kicked or hit stunned in any way, it's going to go back down. So you need to manually re-up it. I think that that is like a pretty big downside. But in general, it tends to overheat on its own pretty fast anyway. So sometimes they're doing you a favor by kicking you and making you cool it down. The laser orbit. I'm going to put this at the very bottom of A tier. I actually think this weapon's really good for maintaining stagger, especially on targets that use pulse shield, but it doesn't really do anything else. It can chase down lights as well, which is helpful, but it's not as impressive as the Huxley if you're trying to build stagger. It's mostly just for maintaining stagger and doing like chip damage, but it does do that job, and I think it's good at it. So I think this can see play. The laser drones, the ones that just sit in the air. These are another like cute pet weapon. They're kind of cool. They're sort of like this area denial. You could probably find a build that makes these work, but I don't know why I have this above the Scutum. This is not as good as the Scutum. I'm going to say it's worse than all of these shields. It's like down here. This is not going to be like a very popular weapon. I have seen people run people down and fire drones over and over and over while kicking them, and it's really annoying and really effective at harass, but in general, I think like most builds are not going to use this, but you can build a really specialized build around it and have it be effective. I don't remember what it's called. These are not really laser drones. These are they're just they're laser turrets, I think. Yeah, the laser turrets. These are the laser drones. Laser drones are very effective. This is definitely at least an A tier weapon, if not an S tier weapon. I'm going to put it in A tier. I don't think it's quite S tier. It can be dodged pretty easily, but it is a good amount of punish damage. I'm going to put it around here with the Sweet 16s. I think it's a bit better. I think it's probably better than these melee weapons. It's probably around where the Cranch is. Laser drones is a really effective way of dealing punish damage when you stun your opponent or when you hit stun them. And it just applies a lot of pressure while somebody's running away from you. Just getting tagged by one of these when they charge them up can be a huge like swing in a game. So I do really recommend the laser drone. I think it goes really well with a lot of these stronger weapons, and it goes well as like a complement to the pulse shield because it has a short lock on time. And that's everything. That is all of the weapons in Armored Core 6 Fire's Rubicon. And this is my tier list for patch 1.07 again. Please let me know what you think in the comments, if you like it or hate it. If you have any of these weapons that you think are better or worse than I rated them, feel free to let me know. Like the video and subscribe if you want me to make more of this content. Just, I would love to hear from you. And, if you find anything annoying too, just please leave a comment. It all helps engagement. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next patch. Hopefully 1.08 is soon. We don't have to wait another 7 months for it.